Hello, we are live, everyone. I'm Chris from Cloud Campaign, just checking in to make sure that our stream is live, that you can hear us and see us okay. If you could just pop into the chat, say hello, let us know where you're tuning in from. We always love to see where folks are. And while we wait for that to come in, I just want to make sure to quickly introduce our friends from Brandzooka joining us today, Adam Hurd and Josh Gallo.
Awesome.
Welcome,
thank you,
guys.
Chris. Great to meet you. We're glad to be here.
Great to be here.
All right. We'll give folks just a few seconds to pop into chat. Nice. Thank you, James. Thank you, Wendy, Laura, John, tuning in from the Philippines. All right. Going international today from Orange County. Rocco, hello from New York. Oh, we got folks from San Diego all over. All right. Massachusetts. Perry from Boulder. Oh, that I wonder who that is. Perry from Boulder. Hello. Oklahoma City, right on. All right, well, seems like everything's working. We've got folks streaming in, so let's go ahead and get into it. Again, I'm Chris from the Cloud Campaign team. I'm responsible for content marketing. And if you're not familiar with Cloud Campaign, we are a white label social media management platform built to help agencies scale. Today, we're going to be talking about something different, something cool, something fun. We're going to be diving into using and aligning programmatic marketing and aligning that with your social media strategy to build a robust overall marketing strategy. And we're doing that today with our friends from Brandzooka. So I'd love to give them a chance to introduce themselves, who they are, and what they do. So Josh, do you want to?
Absolutely. Thank you, Chris. My name is Josh. I'm the Director of Sales here at Brandzooka. I'm excited to meet everybody on this call that is familiar with Cloud Campaign, or those that are familiar with Brandzooka and not Cloud Campaign, and kind of talk how we overlap. Today we'll get into how programmatic operates within your stack of advertising directly in comparison to Cloud Campaign, and really how it's a great sister company that we found here in Boulder. We've been side by side for quite some time. I also have Adam on the call with us today, which I'll hand it over to him, of course, for an introduction on his side.
Hey everybody, Adam from Brandzooka here. Run sales operations and enablement over here for a lot of our users. So yeah, happy to dive into how to align your social strategies along with all things paid media.
All right, and this is going to be an exciting conversation. I think all of us have been chomping at the bit to talk about this stuff. Shared a few exciting lunches to plan this event. So before we get into the meat of this webinar, let's do some housekeeping. We are going to be doing a Q&A at the end, but don't let that stop you from putting any questions you have in the chat. We'll try to get to them if we can, but if we don't get to it, please don't worry. We will respond to them at the end. Also, after we're done here, we will be sending an email recording. So you'll be able to watch this anytime you want to relive every exciting moment. Also, there'll be a feedback survey within that email just to let us know how we did. We want to make sure that we're always delivering valuable content to you. So that's just your chance to let us know how we served you today. With that, you guys ready to get into it? All right. So I don't want to make any assumptions that everybody knows exactly what we're talking about when we refer to programmatic marketing, programmatic advertising. So let's set the stage. Can you give us a little breakdown of, use organic social to create content to attract people, build your brand, drive engagement? I think most people on the call are familiar with that. But what is programmatic, and how does that differ from maybe like paid advertising?
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to jump into that. So programmatic is used as a broad term. Programmatic can fit into the realms of social, which is really a bidding algorithm using data to put that ad in front of people. However, the outside of that people are traditionally familiar with is how programmatic fits in a larger ecosystem. The best way to say it is the purple mattress theory, right? When you go to Purple Mattress and then forever you're getting served those ads, and they're finding you both on your Hulu when you're streaming, when you're watching, an online news reel clip on maybe MSN or CNN, and that ad shows up, or maybe those display ads that follow you everywhere. So Brandzooka is a self-service platform that allows people to, really take their creatives and what they're doing in the realms of social, transition those just a little bit, and then be serving on the main programmatic channels: web, mobile video, connected TV, digital audio, and then web and mobile display. So it's a really awesome complement to anything that you're doing on top of your social, still using that technology of data to serve those campaigns. There's a lot to it. Really, that's kind of the fire hose of information, but I know throughout this conversation today, we'll be debriefing on some of that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate being able to just kind of define like what we're talking about specifically, so there's no gaps in sort of what we're talking about. So thank you so much for
Definitely.
clarifying that for us. All right. Well, there's one question that I have then before we kind of dive into some other stuff is with this, with what you just said, what are some of the barriers stopping from people from using programmatic?
Yeah, that's a great question. So traditionally, and this is what excites me about the industry of programmatic as a whole, and specifically Brandzooka, the barriers to entry were massive a few years ago, right? You used to have to work with a massive agency, or you used to have contracts or quite large minimums to get on placements like Hulu or Peacock TV. But nowadays, with no minimums and no contracts through our platform, as long as those creatives are spec'd accordingly, you're going to be able to launch those campaigns within minutes. Second to that is getting into the creative types, right? When you're talking display, when you're talking web mobile video, when you're talking, connected TV, a lot of people have those creatives that they've maybe built, they throw them out on YouTube, they throw them out on Vimeo, but they don't necessarily know that they can activate those outside of the realms of social. So they kind of do that slow burn on social, and then they kind of go to a graveyard. This is an awesome place where they can start activating those really in another realm that complements everything that they're doing on social.
Thank you. The reason I asked that was you gave that example of purple, and I just remember my wife and I talking about getting a purple mattress and then being haunted by ads, not just within the web space or mobile space, but then also like on our podcasts, when we're listening to Spotify, driving, on our, when we're watching Netflix. And so I just wanted to kind of make that connection with folks that, especially folks who are mostly managing like social media or focusing on areas like SEO, that this is a great way to tie that whole customer experience and journey together not to haunt people, but to really make sure that they remember your brand and can recall it and then purchase when the time's right, because we are happy owners of a purple mattress. And
absolutely. No, and if I can add one thing on top of that, and then of course I'm going to hand it to Adam, being our kind of data and intelligence guy in the back end here. But you're going to hear me use the word compliment a lot, right? Like the whipped cream to the pie. And at the end of the day, what we offer, and when you take those campaigns and activate realms of programmatic, brand trust increases. There's been surveys that when people see your ads on social and within those standard kind of social platforms, it's not that they don't trust the brand, but seeing it outside of that just adds that level of security and brand trust that traditionally they can't get to with when you only are launching those social campaigns. But activating some of that stuff and how it's done goes a lot into kind of the bidding algorithms and the technology that's been created. Adam, do you want to kind of open up a little bit about really how the industry's evolved to allow some of the access?
Yeah, and I think a big point, I think you mentioned earlier, is that there's a lot of nuances within programmatic. It's kind of this blanketed word, but I mean, I think that great example of the purple mattress that's just a beautiful retargeting, right? You get to the website, you're checking it out, then it follows you around the world. There's also, I think the big concept of programmatic as well is to, limit ad waste, right? I think one example we always talk about is we all get Chevy truck commercials nonstop. Even if you bought a brand new Chevy truck commercial, you used to see them on TV nonstop. And then with enter programmatic, right, all of a sudden you're getting ads that are more relevant to you, right? And the idea was to make them not these annoying, creepy ads, but to actually have what you're seeing alongside your content be relevant to you. And to your point, Josh, like if you've been and seen a website and then all of a sudden you're seeing something you just searched on the internet on TV, it creates the trust to actually go purchase it. So it kind of benefits both the consumer and the advertiser at the same time.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Let's pull on that a little more because there's a lot of value here in terms of how to use these strategies, when to use these strategies. So what are some of the reasons someone would want to ensure that they're organic and programmatic, if they are using it, are aligned and kind of completing that circuit?
Absolutely. I think I'm going to hand this one to Adam, just being somebody that looks on our data and the down funnel stream of using that organic and then pushing it into, programmatic as well. He works a lot with our marketing team, and really we're doing that internally and eating our own pizza, do you say, or dog food, however you want to use that metaphor these days.
Yeah, and as someone that's pretty avid, in my social stream, right? And then, you get your sponsored ads as well. So, I mean, and we don't have to just talk on the programmatic side, like even paid social, right? All of a sudden you're getting those sponsored ad or even boosted posts. And that's all of a sudden making you follow that brand if you go and sign up, right? Ultimately ending up on their website. The nice part there is, I'm sure everyone's clicked onto a Facebook page or an Instagram page, and then you're getting feeds nonstop with those similar ads and sponsored content. But where it goes even further too is when you actually, then that's in that brand affinity kind of piece where you're, always looking at their social media and all that stuff. But to really convert, right, you got to get over to their website, buy their products, etc. And a lot of times you can do that straight through the app. I'm very guilty of that as well. But once you get over to the site, that's where you might fire on a lot of that retargeting aspects. And then wherever you are, whether you're checking your email, reading the news, that's where the programmatic side's in. It's kind of, a user can enter the funnel from kind of any side, right? A TV ad, a regular programmatic ad somewhere, but usually it actually starts from social media. And then where these other channels come in are following them throughout their whole digital footprint. So I think there's a lot of aspects there. And again, this is more on the light of using programmatic for that, at that, retargeting aspect. With that said, we can totally do the other thing as well with targeting them via, age, demographic, all those aspects as well. And where that comes in with touching social is you might run a display campaign or a TV campaign. And the first thing someone does when they see a TV ad for something, you're not going to go look them up on Google, right? You're going to go check out your Instagram and find them there. And then, so they kind of communicate back and forth, all these channels. So the whole idea is to really have everything working together and having them curated the same way as well. One thing we deal with at Brandzooka a lot is putting out new content on our social feeds and making sure that whatever ads we're running as well, we're always changing up our display ads to match whatever initiative we're running as well. So there's a lot of moving parts, but they're all communicating together.
Yeah, I think that like building a proper web to catch the right, piece of audience I guess we'll dive into this a little bit later in terms of the work required to get into it. Before we do, Kevin did post a question into the chat that I thought we could pop in real quick. More and more surveys and studies are showing that while the barrier to entry to CPMs are going down wholesale into the programmatic space, programmatic retail CPMs are going up, with the disparity increasing relatively rapidly. How does an agency reseller navigate this so they can stay competitive within larger DSP agencies?
Yeah, that is a phenomenal question. Kevin, it sounds like you know a little bit about the space and where CPMs are heading. The agency world, or should I say kind of the landscape overall, has always been that ebb and flow with people trying to increase prices, at the end of the day. This is where a relationship with somebody like Brandzooka really comes in. Our goal is to find the best prices out there, create these contracts that are going to make you competitive with the DSPs. Of course, both the DSP and then combination with the agency, pending your agency, is going to charge that markup, right? Where we come in is at a wholesale level, working through our global scale and contracts and direct relationships with a lot of these partners. We are able to keep those CPMs competitive so that you can compete with the DSP. Now, of course, that sounds as if I'm selling Brandzooka, and I always like to joke, I am the director of sales here, but I do want people to recognize that simultaneously platforms like ours are here to make sure that the landscape stays competitive, because we have multiple choices. And using those choices allows us to work on those contracts for you, really bringing the value to the consumer, which is going to be the agencies and the businesses using our tech.
Yeah. And like full transparency, the reason we're doing this collaboration with Brandzooka is, whereas like Cloud Campaign, our mission is to democratize building a social media marketing agency and scaling that. Brandzooka is democratizing the ability for anyone to be able to use programmatic advertising and roll that into their strategy. So it really is, as Josh said, like a very good complement to each other. But that's the main reason we have them here and are talking to them, because they make accessing what previously was, easier for folks who are maybe running smaller agencies, boutique agencies, and can't afford those maybe premium ad spaces or precise ad spaces that you want.
Great point.
Yeah. Thank you, Kevin, for that question. That was very well timed. All right. Shall we continue? I'm curious, from your guys' perspective, what are some ways that people can start actively aligning this from their content perspective? Like you talked about, this whole journey, and it sounded kind of complicated. So what can people start looking at to align their programmatic?
Go for it, Josh. Go for it.
I know we always go over each other on our side here. I can kind of kick this off and then hand it to Adam, but a lot of times, and I'll stay in the more of the creative realm and then kind of move along to strategy. When it comes to creatives, a lot of people, get into starting to market, they'll build some things, and the barrier to entry is, hey, let's jump straight into social or blogs, right? So they're creating this content and they're starting to make social posts. They're starting to make different size creatives for their different social platforms. And then the same for the video, right? Maybe they'll evolve a little bit more and get some type of video content created. And again, we call it that graveyard or that slow burner or that sizzle where it'll sit there, right? This is a great way to start looking at those basic creatives that you've already done, make some additional tweaks to that. And then all of a sudden you can be on display networks running on some of the most premium channels, right? So, going from social to a few tweaks through, some creative changes. And then all of a sudden you're on CNN or MSN or ESPN, having a display or a video campaign. And then of course, a little bit more refinement can come into those creatives, but then that can get you onto some of those more premium CTV slots like Hulu, Peacock, again, ESPN through a connected TV device. But with that, Adam, I know you were going to tap some stuff onto the end of that.
You said exactly what I was going to go for. I think that's a big one we do here at Brandzooka is whenever we're even putting out any content for social, and granted, we have a pretty, robust social feed, post a couple times a week using Cloud Campaign, of course. But we always take that same content and make, our 8 different display sizes so that we can swap those out. And anytime we're going to have an initiative, we make stuff for our emails, for our social, for our TV ads, anything we can really do there. Now, granted, some of those channels, you spend a lot of money to create assets. And of course, with that said, it's always when you go down the path of creating any assets, I'm thinking connected TV in particular, right? You want to make it something that will last a long time, that you can get a lot of usage out of, that won't get, that creative exhaustion very quickly. So we always think about that as well. And I think everyone that's doing social posts, right, a lot of stuff is recycled there as well. And you're doing it in a way that you can change the context with the, the captions and things like that. And we do the same thing over here where we make assets that we can, change the copy out really quickly and easily. But I think that's pretty much the most important piece is making sure creatives align is the starting point.
Nice. Yeah. I think if you've been following these webinars for a little while now, we've definitely talked about the benefits of batching and building campaigns and being able to think of how can I stretch this out over maybe multiple channels using the same type of media to gain efficiencies in that content creation. And then Brandzooka allows you a gateway to get that collateral into inventory that was previously not accessible to you. Like it'd be great. I think it'd be really cool to just show up on a podcast, inserted somewhere properly timed. That would be fun. So Maya joined us today. Welcome, Maya. She knows all about batching. All right. Well, let's move through this. So we talked about, some ways to start aligning this. What type of content, if you're thinking kind of from an agency owner standpoint, what type of content would be a good starting point to maybe jump into?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we kind of hit it on our last point, but a really easy barrier to entry is going to be coming up with that display creative. Stagnant display is a pretty easy transition from what you're already doing with social to then entering the landscape of having display ads running on premium networks. A cooler part, if you do have the technology, or you can always recruit somebody nowadays through various different channels like Fiverr, for instance, is getting that gift display, right? So just a little bit of movement within that display increases clicks or the actionable CTA of that by about 3x. So traditionally, you can get into it with your stagnant display, but we always try to recommend getting into, a gift display. Another thing that people also have is a lot of times, they'll have audio clips both from like podcasts, or they'll be doing, maybe a YouTube video, and it's not necessarily cut to a 15 or 30 second spot. But if you take some of those audio clips in that 15 or 30 seconds, instantly you can be on some of the top streaming sites like Pandora, iHeartRadio, Spotify. And what's cool about that is those also come with accompanying banner segments as well. So while that iHeartRadio ad is playing, a banner ad pops up. It's a really cool thing to validate your brand and get traditionally into a realm that maybe you haven't thought of, or thought that, you had to have tens of thousands of dollars to enter in the first place. So there's a lot of verticals out there, pending if you have a lot of video first, or if you're on the other side where you have a lot of that, kind of static standard creative, and both of those can kind of merge at the same time. So I don't want to say there's a one way fits all approach to barrier to entry. It really depends on the content that you're sitting on. And a lot of people have this content, but they don't really know how to access those different channels. Adam, is there anything that you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's where I was going as well.
Nice. I do kind of, one of the themes that I do hear sort of recurring a little bit is the lending of trust or credibility to the ad, seeing, by virtue of seeing an advertisement on like a premium space, it is conferring this kind of credibility to the brand in that sense, which I think is something I've noticed come up a few times.
Absolutely. I think as you think about the industry, the consumer is always kind of the last one to understand how this all works, right? So the consumer still believes that that barrier of entry is really there, which means validation that you cross the barrier of entry. So when your ad is played on Peacock when they're watching The Office, and all of a sudden, you know, your brand is being seen on a television that traditionally was locked behind, you know, massive hoops that you had to jump through, people start recognizing, oh, this company may be a little bit bigger than I was recognizing. There may be a little bit more validation. People are using this. I want to purchase this. And you know, then you get into the targeting behind the scenes too, right? With that retargeting and the ad waste, you can be serving directly to that person who was on your website earlier that day, right? So it's not that crapshoot of hopefully you get in front of the right person with that Chevy ad who didn't just purchase the Chevy, but you're actually serving that ad on Peacock television right after they were on your website, potentially looking at different products and services that you offer.
Yeah, I love that the theme of being able to kind of punch bigger than what you are. That's awesome. Cool. Well, let's talk a little bit more about the programmatic side of actually expending, kind of blending strategies and stuff. I'm curious, what would you guys recommend in terms of spend on the programmatic side of things? How would you allocate your budget if you were making recommendations to like a marketing agency?
Yeah, great question. It definitely depends on the size and scope of, you know, any brand or agency and what they're running. But we know kind of industry standard is, you know, 5 to 15% of revenue is usually what's allocated towards paid media. That's a really good starting point to know, hey, how'd you do last month? That's a good place to start. And of course, that's just, you know, the tip of the iceberg. What we usually recommend, and I'm sure Josh will go into kind of, you know, all the different strategies that we currently run with clients, but typically having that retargeting always on, a little bit of brand awareness, but it really comes down to what a user is trying to do, right? Just like Josh mentioned, an easy stepping stone is always display, right? You get a lot of bang for your buck. You can kind of dip your toes into it, see that basic idea of being outside of search and social. And then when someone really wants to expand that strategy, that's when we might bring in some things like that web mobile video and adding in more audience targeting and things like that. But a good starting place is always that retargeting to just kind of push into that realm of having that companion channel coming alongside any paid social. And Josh, feel free to add anything to that, of course.
Yeah, no, exactly what you said. Again, we kind of lean back on the same talking points, but I think where Brandzooka has strived in this industry is to make it as simple as what we are saying these days, right? And really it's getting that creative, recognizing that barrier of entry is now no contracts, no minimums, and you can get into a platform and start bringing that campaign creative that you've had traditionally running on social onto premium networks.
Perfect. Well, so then like when would be good times or maybe like campaigns or things that agencies might want to run in terms of deploying programmatic with their strategies?
Yeah, that can get really wild when you're talking to different strategies, both from a clientele perspective and for the agency itself. A great thing just to talk about here is how Brandzooka promotes our own, you know, marketing, both through organic and then through programmatic. We use a lot of retargeting to realize that, you know, we're after a refined consumer. We're after somebody who is, you know, likely a marketing manager, marketing director, owns a business and is pushing into those realms of advertising. So how do you find those people? That's a little bit harder than, you know, putting some age demographic and, you know, some income selections on there. And so a lot of our stuff even goes into starting with retargeting, right? We'll start with the retargeting, serving people who've been to our site, realizing those audience, those data segments, creating lookalikes, uploading our first party data lists off of emails. And again, what I'm rambling off a lot of different strategies, but there's so many ways that traditionally people don't necessarily know exist. And through an easy consultation call, we can kind of talk to you about all of these things that you may have loaded in your arsenal already, but haven't necessarily been deployed. And they're really easy to actually activate. And so getting into the mode of those campaigns of just making sure that funnel is pushing all the way down. Once somebody's been to that website, are we serving them outside until they're really a customer? Once they are a consumer, are we serving them again, recognizing that maybe on a 30, 60, 90-day life cycle, they're going to need new product. Starting at that and then moving into that kind of brand awareness and that approach. Some clients, again, on the flip side, maybe just our brand awareness. Maybe it's, you know, a car wash, or maybe it's a law firm that's just trying to get the name out there. This is absolutely a great way to do that outside of social to validate that brand.
Nice. There's something that you said that kind of stuck out to me. I want to pull on that thread a little bit, but there's something I wanted to ask first. What are some tips that you have for developing an ideal client customer profile? Because I think what you said was by developing a really good idea of what the client wants, you have a very refined customer profile developed. I imagine it's probably the strategy in programmatic is maybe more focused and specific. So do you have any tips for folks trying to develop that profile on the programmatic side of things? Like what are some like actionable things they can do to sort of
I think
out?
once you have that refined, I think turning it away from like those actual items and more into the strategy again, is recognizing that when you turn programmatic on, very much like social or organic, you want to put that time and dedication into it, right? If you're just going to be throwing $30,000 at the wall like spaghetti, you may not get the best effects versus breaking that 30,000 across 1, 2, 3 months to get that continuous life cycle and brand exposure. A lot of people, still recognize that, we're going to throw some serious money at marketing and we're hoping for these instant results or effects, rather than building that strategy that takes time to grow, very similar to an organic structure as well. And I think that that's important when you're talking about refining both the audience, right? A lot of those learnings come from AI. And I know, Kevin, I saw your question as well, and we can reiterate it, or for those that have read it, is there is a lot of machine learning that goes on behind the scenes here. And having the time with those campaigns allows that machine learning to really process the data. As awesome as we think that the AI learning is, it doesn't happen instantaneously. It takes us serving those ads to people who are interacting with the ad, both clicking or spending time on the website, to recognize those data segments behind it, which then provides the model better and more granular data, right? So the longer that campaign is on, the more and more it's going to start improving, and you're going to see the performance both on the conversion, the click-through, the actual placement, the time of day when the ad is being served. It gets really granular when we get to how that strategy breaks down. And a lot of people want to come in and see those instant boosts. Maybe it's a fall campaign or, a Halloween store. A lot of our people start activating campaigns for, let's say haunted houses in, early September, late August, so that they can start getting those learnings of who's interacting. And then they're ramping the budget to the point when they're seeing that full interaction and media spend.
Awesome. Great question. Thank you for asking that, Kevin. Kevin's our rock star webinar attendee. If you haven't noticed yet, he always asks great questions. We always appreciate him coming on. Yeah. All right. Well, as we sort of dive into like more strategic things like this, what can you give a little commentary on the types of folks or types of targeting that you can go with your ad spend?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a couple of different things. Of course, we've spoken about retargeting a ton. And then there's all of your third-party data. So tapping into the same way in, the Facebook ads platform, right? You have age, demographic, interest, right? And a lot of that's all based off of their ecosystem. Whereas, with any programmatic channel, you're tapping into not only all these different providers to place the ads, but you're also tapping into all of these data providers, right? The Oracles, the Experience of the world. So it's everything from your age targeting, demographic, interests. One that Josh and I always refer to is people that are interested in knitting, right? We ran a large knitting campaign a few years back, and you'd be surprised how much data is out there. So that's always available. And this kind of ties into that last conversation we had of aligning with, hey, who is my audience, right? And a lot of times we have users come to us with, this is my audience, I know it is, when really it might not be, right? And that's where first party data, which is kind of the third prong of that comes in, that's the most valuable piece, right? If you have customer data or you have people that have registered and shown some form of intent, that's the most important piece. And the nice part with, what we do in programmatic is you can take any of that data, upload it, either run campaigns directly to that in a retargeting fashion to then further, instill those values, or you can run lookalikes off that as well. Or of course you can enrich it with more. And what we find a lot of times too, is we'll have, a heavy, e-com based company where we can actually run campaigns to just people that have converted. And then to Josh's point, pull data segments that are associated. And that's usually really interesting. Sometimes it might be, people that are in this age demographic, and we'll see segments like drive Mercedes-Benz, right? And some of those are, extraneous and not necessarily relevant, but it's usually really interesting sometimes where a lot of times a user's hunch for what their target customer is aligns actually with exactly what data does. And that's a nice trigger point to know that we're doing things right? So those are kind of the three main prongs there. And of course there is that natural retargeting, which can be in a couple different forms, right? You can have your classic website pixel retargeting, which is the most standard way. But oftentimes when we have users come to us, especially new brands, where they don't have that web traffic, right? They can't come in and launch a $30,000 retargeting campaign because there's simply not enough people, right? And that's where you get into the interesting aspect of, that's where the goal then turns, we need more site traffic, we need more intent, right? That doesn't mean, to Josh's point earlier, blast out and just get a bunch of people clicking there so you have an audience. It means let's grow that audience, right? To then where you can keep putting more into retargeting. And that can come in a couple different ways. So there's, of course, just sending people with click-through, so that they become part of those pixel targeting audiences. And then there's also the aspect of what we call player event retargeting too. So it's specifically more on the video side, but it also taps into the display side as well. And what that does is, as a campaign's running, anyone that's interacting with that ad, right? You know, maybe not buying anything, but they're clicking on it, or they're watching a video, for example, all the way through. Because of course, a lot of programmatic video ads, as I'm sure most of you've seen them all around the internet, are skippable, right? It's the people that actually go through and watch it, and it automatically pulls those audience into retargeting. And what we do is then we're able to use those signs of intent to then grow that audience and further make it so we can get to a point where it's, 20, 25, 30% of the budget can be going towards retargeting those users. So that's where it kind of differs from a brand that's really well established versus people that are really kind of growing. So I know we deal with the same stuff on the social side as well, with growing followers and things like that.
Yeah. Wow. That was awesome. That was a lot to unpack. Let me see if I can dive into some of that. No, it's great. It's great. But I want to see if we can kind of like, just kind of break some of that down a little bit. So, I mean, what it sounds like is using a lot of data, that valuable data points that are relevant to build more robust marketing strategies across and funnels across different channels for different purposes, whether it's brand building, exposure, identifying if it's a need for more site volume versus driving not artificial clicks, but paid clicks to it. And in conjunction with that, aligning that content with, all of your assets. What's really cool to me through this is I don't know if other marketing agency owners or folks working in the chat here can relate to this. When a client wants something that seems out of reach, right? Like, the worst is, can you give me this viral video on social media? Like, no, I can't make a video viral. That's not a thing we do. But some questions that I have asked, like, what if we got, an ad space on television? Like, well, we just don't have the resource to do broadcast level, blah, blah. There's a lot of excuses and barriers and obstacles that get in the way. And then your client's like, okay, well, either, that sucks, or, you suck. Why can't you get me what I want? So there's just, it's nice to be able to say, I can do this for you and get you to where you want to be. If it is some of these more larger asks in terms of the strategy. I think it's cool to be able to make that more accessible, but also to enable that also as just an additional marketing funnel that might not be previously open to.
Yeah, and to touch on that, I mean, that's a great example, right? And I think it kind of hits on another question that was asked a little bit earlier, even talking through the CPMs. We had a client at Brandzooka around a year ago who was pretty big in New York and specifically just wanted to be on New York Times. However, they hadn't established a relationship with New York Times. And then they recognized when they did start talking with New York Times, there's different segments for both their print and then their digital and then their, website, all the way to like some of the stuff that they're running online. And so through Brandzooka, we were able to kind of refine it all the way down to running on one placement type, which is traditionally unique and maybe it goes against some strategies that we would recommend, but this client knew exactly where they wanted to be and how they wanted to get there. And then leveraging the relationships and the direct access that we had, they were able to get that ad placed specifically on a channel that had barriers of entry that traditionally would cost you 6 figures to get into. And of course, years of developing that relationship with the actual person or the connection over there that hopefully doesn't leave as you're establishing that, right?
Yeah, no, that's really cool. Let's bring in another question real quick. And Kevin, you don't need to apologize for asking questions. But let's just this one. How are you seeing privacy and data issues impacting programmatic targeting ability? For example, Meta continues to constrict targeting ability because of data privacy concerns. Is programmatic going that way?
That is a phenomenal question. We are on the reverse side of the data. So while places like Facebook and Apple and the App Store are constricting data, it actually is refining the data for us, because now the people that are accepting to give the data have done it rightfully so, and we are refining it to know that we are serving to that right person at a higher granularity than ever before. Traditionally, there is known for a lot of ad fraud in this space, and that's something that we've always had to fight against, right? Using third-party services and using people to audit every impression and every data source that we're purchasing from. There could be a lot lumped into that. And as the times go and that data becomes more refined and people now have to accept both the cookies and are rightfully giving that data away, the definition or the refining of that consumer becomes a lot clearer. So on the programmatic side, everything that we are serving to has been rightfully given or purchased on that end. So at the end of the day, a lot of these constraints have helped us out a ton on the programmatic side and who we're serving to. It's always kind of a question that, we get, and then we're excited for that answer, because we are one of the people that, hey, this actually hasn't impacted us. It's benefited the realm of programmatic and people launching these campaigns a ton.
Yeah, and what we noticed too is
That's
with
really
the,
cool.
I think it was the big iOS update, a year and a half ago, and all hands up, right?
Yeah.
And with Meta being primarily mobile driven, right, and a lot of programmatic is still desktop, right? And we have all these other channels as well. We saw an influx, I think, to Josh's point, an influx of users wanting to go to programmatic to get outside of that as well, and it really influenced that all of their data and all of the targeting abilities were coming from that avenue. Whereas all of these different data providers, and whether it's Oracle, Experian, they have so many different ways of gathering this data that's not just from the online data privacy aspect, that there still is so much data out there and still can be utilized. So it did kind of make a rift in everything, but we haven't seen a crazy change, if that makes sense.
All right. Well, what I would like to do now, since we're coming up on the end of our time, is open it up to Q&A. We do have one from Ann already, but if you guys do have questions tuning in, please put them in the chat. But while we wait for that, is video your favorite content type for growing audiences with
That's
intent?
a great question, Ann. And actually, Brandzooka was founded originally as just a video advertising platform. All we initially did was programmatic video. So that's always been kind of our bread and butter, with the idea being that video is the most engaging, right? And we've all known that for ages. That's why platforms like TikTok exist, right? With that said, there's nuances to that, right? Quick 15-second videos where you get the message out before anyone can skip it are one of our favorite ways to grow that intent. Where then you have in retargeting might be more of those 60-second assets to tell a story, right? So there's a lot of nuances in it, but I think from our perspective, absolute video is definitely the most engaging and to drive intent, but it all depends on size and scope and budget, things like that as well. And that kind of goes back into Josh's point of a static creative that is a GIF instead of a JPEG or a PNG is a little bit more engaging because it's easy on the eyes, it moves, it tracks you. So absolutely, I think it's our favorite.
Yeah.
Yeah, there really is just a strong shift toward video content, which does make it adds more burden to agency owners, content creators. But thankfully, if you are creating these assets for social media, you can generally batch this type of work into a way that would lend itself to more of a premium ad space. I did just share a poll in the chat, yes or no. Are you currently using programmatic advertising in your marketing strategy? If you don't mind, head over there and let us know if you are using that. And there's another question from Rocco. Can the presenters share their LinkedIn and or email so we all can connect? Of course, absolutely. If they're quick enough on the draw, Adam and Josh can post their LinkedIn in the chat. Otherwise, we will send links in the follow-up email. We'll link you to Brandzooka. We'll also send links to their LinkedIn accounts. So you can connect with them as well. Any other questions? If not, we'll let you guys get back to your day. Just a reminder that we will be sending a follow-up email. That's where you can download and watch the replay, get the links to the show notes, links to Adam and Josh and Brandzooka, like I mentioned. Real quick, guys, where can you be found? Let us know.
Absolutely.
Josh,
Brandzooka.com. If you're interested in learning a little bit more about our product and our service, we'd love to set up a consultation demo with you and walk you through our tech. Again, no minimums, no contracts. If you're more of a self-doer, you can jump in there and actually sign up for an account today. It's as easy as a password and an email, and you'll be able to jump right in. Second to that, for anybody on the Brandzooka side, we started using Cloud Campaign internally, and we absolutely love it. It's helped us streamline our our social management platforms and really how we're kind of, aggregating all of our stuff together. So if you are on the Brandzooka side and not necessarily as familiar with the cloud campaign, we didn't necessarily get as deep as I wanted to. I wish we could hold you guys here hostage for another 45 minutes, but take a look at Cloud Campaign. It's a great service, and we absolutely love the platform. Again, I'm going crazy on this because I'm on the outside looking in, and it's helped us a ton on the Brandzooka. So check them out. Again, very low barrier to entry for what else we've seen out there, and it's been incredible so far.
Well, appreciate that. And again, like to everyone watching, the reason we wanted to join forces together is, both companies, our mission is to make these things easy to do, accessible. And we just saw a fantastic opportunity to help you all create more robust, bigger, better marketing strategies so you can reach who you want, where you want, even if they're on the New York Times, even if they're on, Scamanda podcast that's super hot right now. I don't know if you checked that out, but it's actually really good. All right, folks. We'll send that email to you here shortly. Thank you so much for attending. Adam, Josh, thank you guys so much for your time today. I hope we get a chance.
Chris, thank you so much. I'm sure we'll be back at it.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Talk soon, everybody.
All right.
Bye, everyone.
Have a great rest of your week and a weekend. Bye.